Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daily Gold Podcast. Today we're speaking with Andy Swarthout. He is the founder and CEO of Bear Creek Mining Corporation. Andy, let's get right to it. I mean, yesterday was obviously an extremely difficult day in the precious metals market, but for Bear Creek, you guys had a very important news release that you're really excited about. Why don't you run through it for us? And I know it's kind of a long release, but maybe you could just talk about the highlights.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Jordan. It was a very good news release, and basically what it addresses are two main points. One is the ESIA, that is the Environmental Impact Statement, formal public hearing, which is the last requirement for public hearings for the approval of the ESIA, was held on Friday. It was attended by 800 members of the local communities, which represents just about everybody out there because it's a very sparsely populated area. The hearings went very, very well. They were managed by the Minister of Energy and Mines, and all the comments were in favor of the project. So we, as expected, we were quite pleased with both the attendance and the support and the successful outcome of the hearing. The other component of the news release, which I think is equally as important, refers to an agreement that we finalized several days prior to the public hearing last week. And the agreement commits Bear Creek to a life of mine annual payment schedule, which consists of annual payments of $1.6 million, which is to be dedicated towards social investment projects. And it begins its life of mine, 23 years, covers the 2 or 3 years of pre-production period, as well as the 20 years of operations. Importantly, the payments are conditional, that development and operations of the mine are uninterrupted, mainly being any protests or blockades or interruptions in general that might be fomented by the local communities. The payments are suspended. So we've reached an agreement where the communities have skin in the game, if you will, and the company has made a solid long-term commitment toward project investments. The other part of the agreement that is quite innovative and also addresses many problems that operating mines have through their mine life is we've formed, as a part of this agreement, a trust structure, and it is comprised of the 5 surrounding communities. They've signed the agreement with the trust, and the purpose of the trust is to populate it with local elected officials from these 5 communities, and the funds that are generated over the life of mine, these annual payments, will then go into this trust, which will be managed by Bear Creek as well as several other independent members, sort of as an oversight committee. And the trust will debate and approve projects for which they want these monies to be invested in. And then the oversight group releases the funding to the trust. So the communities have the power to make the decisions in a very transparent and a democratic process. So what this will achieve is questions about so many projects when capital is injected by mining companies, it goes into the communities, and accounting is not clear, or the communities are not happy with the investments that they are responsible for making. So this really provides some long-term stability to this investment process, and I believe it's unprecedented in Peru, and it's being recognized here as a very innovative and probably a very good template or model for future negotiations with communities on new projects.
Andy, so how does Bear Creek move forward from here, and also what will the situation be in Peru moving forward?
Well, I think the completion of this of the hearing and the agreements really sets the company on a very strong path toward permits and ESIA approval for the Coroni project. The public hearing is really the mark of social license that the government wants to see in order to really push these environmental impact statements through approval and get these investments made. So I think that our guidance with respect to Corani is that we will certainly have the SIA approval by the end of 2013 as we've guided, and I suspect because of the strength of what we did last week, it could be much sooner. In Peru, in general, I think there are a number of projects which people just don't tend to refer to, which are going very, very well. There's the Hudbay Constancia project, which is located just a couple 100 kilometers from Corani, which is now installing SAG mills and shipping and building mining equipment. So, that's a very successful project. Toro Mocho, the Chinalco project, they've moved an entire town, and they are now beginning to do pre-stripping, and they should be in operation by the fourth quarter of 2013. And very interestingly, a news release came out this morning from a company called Sullivan, which has the Shahuindo project up in north central Peru. They had a very successful ESIA hearing like we did a few weeks back, and this morning they announced that they have their permit to start construction of the power substation facilities, and they expect ESIA approval within months, and their construction permits by the end of 2013. So I think these are very, very strong signals that some of us are beginning to turn the corner here in Peru, and we hope and I expect that it will provide some good momentum going forward. That projects will now start to move out of these positions of paralysis.
Andy, for those who are new to the Bear Creek story, can you tell them about the potential economics of the Corani project and how it would be impacted by today's current silver prices of $23 instead of the $30 that we saw for much of last year?
Would that? I mean, does that have a serious or negative impact on the potential economics?
Not particularly. I mean, obviously we would be much happier with $30 silver, of course, but Corani is a quite robust project. I mean, we did our base case at $18 silver and 85-cent lead and zinc. So the price at 22 to 23 still is exceeds our hurdle rate for IRR according to our financial models. And I think what's important is that the Corani mine sequence starts off in the first 10 years in the highest grade material. It's an open pit project with a very low stripping ratio, and the highest grade material goes through the processing plant in the first 10 years. So the cash costs of all in net of byproducts for the first 5 years is almost minus 50 cents. So you achieve a very, very quick payback, and that's what helps to support the IRR even at today's prices, and I would say even down to as low as $16 to $17.
Andy, on that note, before we close, is there anything else you want to mention that we didn't discuss?
Well, I think one other thing that I would point out is that the Peruvian the government has taken strong notice of what we have done last week. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's a different approach. It's been very successful. It's the result of an extremely dedicated and talented team working with these communities to gain mutual confidence, and I think it reflects a potential model for addressing these community situations on projects going forward. And in fact, I think that we can convince the government and are convincing the government that with respect to the Santa Ana project, which we all know is still seeking a resolution, I think that this model will be very successful in attacking that problem next.
Okay, Andy, well, on that note, thanks so much for the time today. Really appreciate you giving us and our listeners an update, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
I'm very happy to do it, Jordan, anytime.